The surgical marker felt cold against Valentina Cruz's skin as Dr. Hassan drew lines across her chest, marking where each organ would be removed. Through the haze of pre-surgical sedation, she could hear him discussing prices with someone on speakerphone. $50,000 for the heart, $30,000 for each kidney, $15,000 for the liver segments. What had started as a miraculous offer of free cardiac surgery from a Hearts for Hope charity had become something far more sinister. Now, strapped to an operating table in a facility that bore no resemblance to the prestigious Houston hospital she'd expected, Valentina realized she wasn't here to receive a new heart. She was here to provide multiple hearts, kidneys, and organs to the highest bidders. 6 months earlier, Valentina had been slowly dying in Caracas, her congenital heart defect worsening daily, while Venezuela's collapsed healthcare system offered no hope for the surgery she desperately needed. At 26, she watched her life shrink to the confines of her apartment. Unable to climb stairs without gasping, unable to work, unable to plan any future beyond the next day's struggle to breathe. When the email arrived from Hearts for Hope, offering free cardiac surgery in America for qualifying patients, it felt like a divine intervention arriving just in time. The charity's website was professional and compelling, featuring testimonials from grateful patients, photos of state-of-the-art medical facilities, and detailed information about their mission to provide life-saving cardiac care to underprivileged patients from developing countries. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, their patient coordinator, had conducted thorough video consultations, reviewing Valentina's medical records with expertise that impressed even her skeptical family members. The application process had been extensive but legitimate, requiring medical documentation, financial statements proving inability to afford private treatment, and personal essays describing how cardiac surgery would change Valentina's life. Dr. Mitchell had guided her through each step, expressing genuine concern about her deteriorating condition and urgency about beginning treatment before her window of surgical viability closed permanently. The visa process had been surprisingly smooth, with Hearts for Hope providing documentation that satisfied embassy officials about the legitimate medical purpose of Valentina's travel. The charity had covered all expenses, flights, accommodation, even spending money for her recovery period in America. Everything suggested a well-funded, professionally managed humanitarian organization dedicated to saving lives that would otherwise be lost to economic inequality. Valentina's arrival in Houston had confirmed every positive expectation about American medical care. Dr. Mitchell met her at the airport personally, driving her through the city's impressive medical center while pointing out various hospitals and research facilities. The accommodation was comfortable, a hotel room near the medical district with all amenities covered by the charity's generous budget for international patients. The initial medical evaluation had taken place at what appeared to be a legitimate medical facility, complete with advanced diagnostic equipment and professional staff wearing scrubs emblazoned with Hearts for Hope logos. Dr. Hassan, the cardiac surgeon, had impressive credentials displayed prominently in his office, along with photos of successful surgeries and grateful patients from around the world. Valentina's cardiac catheterization and diagnostic testing had revealed the full extent of her heart damage, confirming that surgery was indeed urgently needed to prevent imminent heart failure. Dr. Hassan had explained procedure in detail, describing how they would replace her defective valve and repair damaged tissue using the latest minimally invasive techniques. The surgery would take place at Houston Methodist Hospital, one of America's premier cardiac centers. The days leading up to surgery had been filled with preparation that seemed entirely professional and appropriate. Nutritional counseling to optimize her pre-surgical health, psychological support to address anxiety about the major operation, and detailed consent procedures that covered every aspect of the cardiac repair she would receive. Valentina felt grateful beyond words for the comprehensive care that would have been impossible in Venezuela. But subtle details had begun bothering Valentina as the surgery date approached. The medical facility where she'd undergone testing was located in an office building rather than a hospital complex. Phone calls to verify her surgery time at Houston Methodist had been met with confusion, with hospital staff claiming no record of her scheduled procedure. When she mentioned these concerns to Dr. Mitchell, explanations were always plausible but increasingly vague. The night before surgery, Valentina had been moved to what Dr. Mitchell described as a pre-surgical recovery facility where she could receive specialized cardiac monitoring before the operation. The building looked medical from the outside, but inside it felt more like a hotel than a hospital. Other patients were present, but conversations with them revealed confusion about their own procedures and treatment plans. Maria from Guatemala was supposedly receiving kidney surgery, but couldn't explain why she needed the procedure. Carlos from Honduras claimed to be getting liver treatment, but seemed healthy and showed no signs of hepatic disease. Elena from Colombia was scheduled for lung surgery, but had no respiratory symptoms. All had been recruited by Hearts for Hope through similar processes. All had received identical promises about free treatment at prestigious American hospitals. The morning of surgery, Valentina was transported to yet another facility. This one clearly not Houston Methodist, despite assurances that they were simply using an affiliated surgical center for specialized procedures. The operating room looked professional enough, but the staff seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact and speaking in hushed tones that suggested something beyond normal pre-surgical preparation. Dr. Hassan's demeanor had changed completely from their previous consultations. Gone was the warm bedside manner and careful explanation of procedures. Instead, he spoke about Valentina as if she weren't present, discussing her case with assistants in clinical terms that focused more on the quality of her organs than the treatment of her cardiac condition. His references to harvesting rather than repairing began to clarify the true nature of her situation. The anesthesia induction had proceeded normally until Valentina heard Dr. Hassan on the phone with what sounded like potential buyers rather than medical colleagues. He was describing the excellent condition of her kidneys, the youthful quality of her liver, and the overall health of her organ systems despite her cardiac defect. The conversation included negotiations about delivery schedules, payment methods, and coordination with other surgical teams. Through the haze of sedation, Valentina began understanding the horrifying reality of her situation. Hearts for Hope wasn't a legitimate charity, but a sophisticated organ trafficking operation that recruited healthy patients from developing countries under the pretense of providing free medical care. The extensive medical testing hadn't been for treatment planning, but for organ evaluation and mark assessment. The surgical markers Dr. Hassan was now drawing on her body outlined not cardiac repair sites, but organ removal locations. Her heart, kidneys, liver, corneas, and other transplantable tissues have been sold to multiple recipients, with her body essentially being dismantled for parts. The charity's humanitarian mission was nothing more than cover for a commercial organ harvesting operation targeting desperate patients from countries where oversight was minimal. Dr. Mitchell's patient coordination had actually been victim recruitment, identifying individuals with healthy organs who could be lured to America through promises of life-saving treatment. The visa process had been legitimate because Hearts for Hope was registered as a real charity, providing perfect cover for international organ trafficking. Valentina's documentation had all been authentic, just not for the purposes she'd understood. The other patients Valentina had met weren't fellow charity recipients, but fellow victims selected for their organ compatibility with paying customers who could afford black market transplants. Maria's kidneys had been sold to a wealthy businessman whose own kidney disease could be cured with young, healthy replacements. Carlos's liver would save an alcoholic who could afford to buy what his lifestyle had destroyed. The surgical facility was equipped for organ harvest operations rather than therapeutic procedures, with multiple operating rooms designed to process several victims simultaneously while maintaining the harvested organs at optimal condition for transplantation. The staff Valentina had mistaken for regular medical personnel were actually specialists in organ extraction and preservation rather than patient care. Hearts for Hope's business model was brutally efficient, targeting patients who were already seriously ill and unlikely to be missed quickly if they disappeared during supposed medical treatment. Valentina's cardiac condition made her particularly valuable because her other organs remained healthy, while her overall prognosis provided plausible cover for a fatal outcome during surgery. The charity's marketing had been sophisticated enough to fool not only victims, but also embassy officials, immigration authorities, and even some legitimate medical professionals who had provided references without fully understanding the organization's true activities. Hearts for Hope maintained relationships with real hospitals and medical facilities that unknowingly provided credibility for their organ trafficking operations. Dr. Hassan's credentials were authentic, but his medical practice had evolved from legitimate cardiac surgery to organ harvesting, as the financial rewards of black market transplants far exceeded those of conventional medicine. He now specialized in maximizing organ yield from individual victims, while maintaining plausible deniability about their deaths through careful documentation of surgical complications. The coordination required for Hearts for Hope's operations was staggering, involving recruitment teams in multiple countries, medical facilities in the United States, and distribution networks that could transport harvested organs to recipients around the world. Valentina was just one piece in a massive criminal enterprise that generated millions of dollars by converting desperate patients into profitable commodities. The legal protections that Hearts for Hope enjoyed as a registered charity provided perfect cover for activities that would otherwise attract immediate law enforcement attention. Their tax-exempt status, government grants, and legitimate charitable activities created a facade that made investigation unlikely while providing resources to fund their illegal operations. Valentina's family back in Venezuela had no way of knowing that their daughter's miraculous opportunity for free cardiac surgery was actually a death sentence disguised as humanitarian aid. Hearts for Hope had provided them with regular updates about her successful treatment and recovery, maintaining the fiction that she was receiving excellent medical care until her organs could be harvested and sold. The psychological manipulation involved in Hearts for Hope's operations extended beyond simple fraud to systematic exploitation of human desperation and hope. Victims were selected specifically for their vulnerability, recruited through their medical needs, and processed through systems designed to maximize compliance while minimizing resistance or escape opportunities. The medical ethics violations inherent in Hearts for Hope's operations were matched by the complete absence of informed consent for any actual procedures. Patients consented to cardiac surgery but received organ harvesting, agreed to treatment but became sources of transplantable tissue, trusted medical professionals who betrayed that trust for financial gain. The international scope of Hearts for Hope's operations provided protection from law enforcement coordination while ensuring steady supplies of potential victims from countries where medical oversight was minimal and patient disappearances might not be investigated thoroughly. Venezuela's ongoing crisis made it particularly attractive as a source country for organ trafficking. Dr. Hassan's explanation of the harvesting process was delivered with clinical detachment that suggested routine rather than aberrant behavior. Valentina would be kept alive through artificial life support while her organs were removed in sequence, with each extraction timed to maximize viability for the intended recipients. Her death would be documented as surgical complications during attempted cardiac repair. The buyers for Valentina's organs included wealthy individuals from around the world who could afford black market transplants rather than waiting for legitimate organ allocation through official channels. Her heart would go to a European businessman, her kidneys to separate American recipients, her liver to someone in Asia who had paid premium prices for young, healthy tissue. The preservation technology used by Hearts for Hope was state-of-the-art, ensuring that harvested organs could survive transport to recipients in different countries while maintaining optimal condition for transplantation. This technical sophistication allowed them to serve international markets rather than being limited to local buyers, dramatically increasing their profit margins. Valentina's realization that she was about to be murdered for her organs coincided with a gradual wearing off of her sedation, apparently a miscalculation by the anesthesia team that provided her with a crucial window of consciousness during which escape might still be possible. The surgical prep had taken longer than planned, giving the drugs time to metabolize while Dr. Hassan handled business calls. The layout of the surgical facility became clearer as Valentina's awareness returned, revealing security measures designed to prevent patient escape rather than ensure patient safety. Electronic locks, limited exit points, and staff positioning all suggest a facility designed for organ processing rather than medical treatment. Her window for escape was closing rapidly as surgical preparations neared completion. The other victims Valentina had met were presumably in various stages of organ harvesting in adjacent operating rooms, their own trust in Hearts for Hope having led them to similar fates. The charity's efficient processing meant that multiple patients could be harvested simultaneously, maximizing the facility's throughput while minimizing the time any individual spent in the dangerous pre-surgical phase where escape remained possible. Dr. Hassan's phone conversations revealed the existence of multiple surgical teams working in coordination, suggesting that Hearts for Hope operated several facilities simultaneously and maintained the capacity to process dozens of victims at any given time. Valentina's case was just one transaction in a much larger criminal enterprise that treated human beings as renewable resources. The documentation of Valentina's case for legal and insurance purposes had been prepared in advance, with death certificates, surgical reports, and family notification letters all ready for completion once the organ harvesting was finished. The bureaucratic preparation demonstrated the systematic nature of Hearts for Hope's operations and their confidence in avoiding legal consequences. The corruption involved in Hearts for Hope's operations extended beyond the medical staff to immigration officials, charity regulators, and potentially even law enforcement personnel who had been compromised through bribes or other forms of coercion. The organization operated with impunity that suggested protection at multiple levels of government oversight. Valentina's growing awareness of her situation was accompanied by returning physical strength as the sedation continued to wear off, providing her with possibly her last opportunity to resist the organ harvesting process. The restraints holding her to the operating table were designed for unconscious patients rather than someone actively fighting for their life. The timing of Dr. Hassan's business calls had created a brief window during which the operating room was less carefully monitored, with staff focused on preparing equipment rather than watching the patient. Valentina realized that any escape attempt would have to occur within the next few minutes before surgical procedures began, and her opportunity for survival disappeared permanently. The surgical instruments laid out for her organ harvesting included specialized tools for maintaining organ viability during extraction, preserving tissue quality for transplantation, and coordinating multiple simultaneous removals. The technical sophistication of the equipment demonstrated Hearts for Hope's investment in maximizing the value of each victim while maintaining the highest possible success rates for organ recipients. Hearts for Hope's patient recruitment had been targeted specifically at individuals whose disappearance would be less likely to trigger intensive investigation, including people from countries with limited law enforcement resources, patients with serious medical conditions that provided plausible explanations for fatal outcomes, and individuals with minimal family support networks who might not pursue missing person cases aggressively. The charity's legitimate activities provided perfect cover for their illegal operations, with real charitable work funding and justifying the infrastructure used for organ trafficking. Hearts for Hope actually did perform some legitimate cardiac surgeries, maintaining their reputation, while using the same facilities and staff for both legal medical treatment and illegal organ harvesting. Dr. Hassan's transformation from legitimate cardiac surgeon to organ trafficker represented a career progression that Hearts for Hope had facilitated through gradually increasing involvement in questionable procedures, financial incentives that exceeded legitimate medical income, and psychological conditioning that normalized the commodification of human organs as medical resources. The legal frameworks governing charitable organizations, medical tourism, and international patient treatment all provided loopholes that Hearts for Hope exploited to operate their organ trafficking business while maintaining the appearance of legitimate humanitarian work. Their understanding of regulatory gaps demonstrated sophisticated legal planning behind their criminal activities. Valentina's cardiac condition, which had made her desperate enough to trust Hearts for Hope's offer, was ironically what made her less valuable as an organ donor, since her heart couldn't be transplanted to another recipient. However, her other organs remained healthy and valuable, making her a profitable target despite the cardiac defect that had originally brought her to the charity's attention. The psychological preparation of Hearts for Hope's victims included building trust through legitimate medical consultation, creating dependency through control of information and resources, and maintaining compliance through isolation from support networks. These techniques ensured that patients would cooperate with their own exploitation until it was too late to resist effectively. The international organ market that Hearts for Hope served included recipients who were fully aware they were purchasing organs from unwilling donors, as well as others who maintained plausible deniability about the source of their transplants. Both categories of buyers enabled the continuation of organ trafficking through their willingness to pay premium prices for healthy tissue regardless of its origin. The documentation requirements for international organ transport have been satisfied through Hearts for Hope's relationships with corrupt officials who provided legitimate paperwork for illegitimate organ transfers. This bureaucratic cooperation was essential for moving harvested organs across international borders while avoiding detection by customs or medical authorities. Valentina's case represented the culmination of months of planning, recruitment, and preparation by Hearts for Hope's organization, with multiple staff members involved in bringing her from Venezuela to the operating table where her organs would be harvested. The investment in individual victims demonstrated the high value of successfully completed organ trafficking operations. The medical records that Hearts for Hope had compiled for Valentina were more detailed than those typically required for cardiac surgery, focusing particularly on the condition and compatibility of all her transplantable organs rather than just her cardiac pathology. This comprehensive evaluation had been disguised as thorough pre-surgical assessment, but actually served as market research for potential organ buyers. Dr. Hassan's surgical planning involved coordinating multiple recipient surgeries in different locations, with Valentina's organs being transported to various medical facilities where paying customers waited for their transplants. The logistical complexity of these operations required precise timing and extensive coordination between multiple medical teams and transport specialists. The anesthesia protocols used by Hearts for Hope were designed to maintain organ viability during harvesting rather than patient comfort during surgery, with drug combinations that preserved tissue quality while ensuring the victim remained unconscious throughout the extraction process. These pharmaceutical techniques represented specialized knowledge that distinguished organ trafficking from conventional medical practice. Valentina's realization that her time was running out motivated her to attempt escape despite the overwhelming odds against success. The alternative, being dissected alive for her organs, made even the most desperate escape attempt seem preferable to passive acceptance of her fate. Her struggle against the restraints holding her to the operating table became a fight not just for freedom, but for her fundamental right to exist as a complete human being. The sounds from adjacent operating rooms suggested that other victims were already undergoing organ harvesting, with the mechanical noises of life support equipment and surgical procedures creating a horrible symphony of medical murder. Valentina's awareness of their fate added urgency to her own escape efforts, while reinforcing the systematic nature of Hearts for Hope's criminal operations. The security measures that Hearts for Hope had implemented to prevent victim escape included not only physical restraints and locked doors, but also psychological conditioning that made resistance seem futile. Patients were isolated from outside communication, deprived of information about their true situation, and subjected to medical authority that most people were conditioned to obey without question. Dr. Hassan's return to the operating room signaled the end of Valentina's window for escape, as surgical procedures would begin immediately and her opportunity for survival would disappear permanently. The surgical marker lines drawn on her body had dried while she struggled with her restraints, creating a macabre map of how her body would be divided among multiple recipients willing to pay for her organs. The final preparations for Valentina's organ harvesting included connecting life support equipment that would maintain her biological functions during the extraction process, ensuring that her organs remained viable even as her body was systematically dismantled. This technology allowed Hearts for Hope to maximize the value of each victim while maintaining the highest possible success rates for organ transplantation. The international organ trafficking network that Hearts for Hope served represented a massive criminal enterprise worth hundreds of millions of dollars annually, with Valentina's case being just one small transaction in a global market that commodified human bodies for the benefit of wealthy recipients who could afford to purchase health rather than wait for it through legitimate channels.